Russia achieved a long-awaited breakthrough in negotiations, but not in Istanbul. Rather, in Moscow, during the Victory Day parade on May 9th with leaders of foreign countries who were not afraid to visit our country. And the whole point is the proposal to build Russian nuclear domes on their territory, modern, large, and small nuclear power plants with real superpower, the significance of which the world is only now beginning to realize. We will tell you more about this, about the new Hero of the Week, and also give a relevant educational recommendation in today's episode, after a brief summary of positive news. Another batch of multifunctional Su-35S fighter jets has been delivered to the troops. A minesweeper of Project 12,700 was laid down at the Srednevsky shipbuilding plant. A production line for domestic cellular network modules has opened in the Moscow region. Flexible polymer packaging is being produced in the Kaluga region. Tetra Pak format packaging in Chekhov. Medical device production has expanded in Samara. A large-scale metal structure facility launched in the Nizhny Novgorod region. Construction materials are being produced in the Irkutsk region, and Russia's first lactulose production facility has been launched in Stavropol. At the 59th International Mendeleev Chemistry Olympiad for school students in Brazil, for the first time, each of the 10 members of the Russian team won a gold medal. The entire world press was following the attempt to reach an agreement in Istanbul, but the most interesting thing happened quietly a week earlier in Moscow. Where did the leaders of countries friendly to Russia arrive for the victory parade? As a result of negotiations with them, significant progress was made on the issue of building Russian nuclear power plants abroad. The number one news was the announcement of the intention to quickly launch the process of preparing to build a large generation 3+ nuclear power plant in Vietnam, as well as a research nuclear reactor. President Lula da Silva of Brazil expressed strong interest in the construction of a Russian nuclear power plant. Negotiations have started on building more power units in China, despite ongoing construction at the Tianwan and Zhudapu nuclear power plants. Suddenly, Serbia expressed a desire to become a country of peaceful nuclear energy. Following President Vucic's visit to the capital, plans were announced to build a full-scale nuclear power plant in the republic. A few days later, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, also visited Russia. His country wants to purchase our floating nuclear power units. Also this week, at the AEM Special Steel Metallurgical Plant, production began on the reactor unit hull for the RITM-200N. For Uzbekistan, it will become the first country in Central Asia with its own nuclear power plant, but not the last. Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan are currently studying our proposal. Let me also remind you that we are building plants in Egypt, Bangladesh, Turkey, and Hungary. Belarus has already built a nuclear power plant, proving to be more far-sighted than many others. But it is precisely the breakthrough in negotiations on May 9th that sharply expands the geography of Russia's nuclear presence in the world, and may even come as a surprise. We've been offering our services for a long time, but only now has progress been made. Even the small country of Serbia, surrounded on all sides by NATO countries, has dared to do something unheard of by European standards. So what's the reason? Well, here's why. We've already mentioned more than once that even the Western world has lifted the taboo on nuclear energy, realizing that it's indispensable. The countries of Central Asia are on the verge of a major energy crisis due to the worn-out old Soviet infrastructure. And for them, nuclear power plants are a reliable and relatively quick way to stabilize a future crisis, which our country doesn't need at all either. Russian small nuclear power plant projects enable faster construction and cost savings, but this was already known. So what has changed nowadays and made us look at the issue differently? We dare to suggest that it is the conflict in Ukraine. The fact is, that nuclear power plants have become the only source of generation that is not subject to direct attacks by opposing sides. Even the much-suffering Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant continues to operate, despite endless attempts to disable its power lines and other infrastructure. This is a manifestation of the new multipolarity of our world. Any country that dares to launch a serious attack on a nuclear power plant, especially if it leads to a disaster, will face universal condemnation, sanctions, and possibly even more devastating retaliatory strikes. That is why power plants remain an island of, if not absolute, then relative safety, even in the conditions of direct military or hybrid conflict. This is especially important for small countries that may lose thermal power plants or dams as a result of attacks, but will retain their nuclear sources, which guarantee electricity production. It is worth remembering that even Israel has never carried out direct attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities or on the nuclear research center in Syrian Tir ez-Zor, although it tried to disable them by other means. But practice has shown that a gas pipeline can be blown up on the seabed, thermal power plants and oil refineries can catch fire, gas compressor stations can come under attack, and only nuclear power plants continue to operate. And that means they become a kind of refuge, because in addition to political protection, they also have a deliberately high level of physical security. For example, Russian Generation 3+ plants with multiple layers of protection can even withstand a plane crash. In this light, our idea of placing data storage facilities at nuclear power plants looks completely different. Such a project is already being implemented in Russia because information is also the key to maintaining control over the country. Isn't this the reason for the renewed interest in Russian nuclear power plants from foreign countries? We can't say for sure, but at the very least, such an assumption sounds logical. After all, we're not just selling a source of energy, but also a kind of nuclear shield that can reduce many risks during a war. We will continue to follow this extremely interesting topic and talk about it in future episodes. Next, about the hero. A resident of Kaspisk, Alexander Ulyankin, was peacefully fishing by the pond when a frightened boy ran up to him and shouted that his little sister had drowned. The man dropped his fishing gear and hurried after the child, who led him to a pit filled with water. The girl was nowhere to be seen. Alexander dived in once, then again, and felt her body, pulled her out onto the shore, and then gave her first aid. The situation was critical. The local residents who arrived helped take the victim to the hospital, where doctors fought for her life for 2 hours. Fortunately, they succeeded, and at the moment the girl is already receiving treatment in a regular ward. Alexander Ulyankin works as a security guard at the school and doesn't consider himself a hero, but he is happy that he was able to be in the right place at the right time. We thank him for his heroic deed and wish him good health.